Hi, everybody. Our guest this week on In Her Words is Chloe Domont. Her name probably sounds familiar as her film Fair Play was the buzz of Sundance this past January. We really had a great time getting to know Chloe and hearing her process in creating this amazing film. And you're going to see a lot more of her as the film heads to the Toronto Film Festival, has a theatrical release, and its release on Netflix this fall. We hope you enjoy.
Well, we'd love to kind of kick off. The way that we kind of operate, in terms of our podcast is just we really love to hear your story. So really just, how you started, what interested you, really to kind of what drew you to writing and,
hmm
how did you kind of get your start?
I started writing at a very young age. It was my creative outlet. I discovered like very early on. I was terrible at drawing or painting, so I knew that that was not, not for me.
Did you
Um,
grow up in a creative household?
I did. My parents were not artists, but they were very creative people, I would say, and very eccentric people. And I was definitely inspired by all of the insanity that was going on in the household. So writing was a good way to funnel that, and process that at the time. But yeah, so I started writing at a pretty young age, and started out as poetry, and then short stories, and then one act plays, and growing up in LA, obviously gravitated towards film and TV. And my father, he was a cinephile, so he showed me films early on that just changed my life, and also very inappropriate films that I should that no like probably 10-year old should ever watch, but he showed me those movies.
Like
Um,
what?
like Clockwork Orange, and you're just
Oh, okay.
yeah.
For a 10-year-old, yeah.
Yeah, for 10-year old. But so you're like, what? But no, it was those movies definitely shaped everything for me. And um, yeah, so I knew I wanted to write and direct by like the time I was like 14, 15, and so by the time I got to college, I applied to NYU. I went to Tisch Film School, and that was incredible. It was a very hands-on program. Other film schools, they do a lot of like film theory and studying film and film analysis. 2 or 3 years before you even actually touch a camera. NYU, I thought was great about it. They throw you a camera within the first 2 weeks, and they're like, figure it out. And nothing teaches you about filmmaking like carrying a light kit up 6 flights of stairs and then plugging in all the lights and realizing that none of them work, and then you have to drag the light kit all the way back down and still shoot your movie the next day somehow without those lights, and shoot on film with other kids who still haven't figured out how to shoot on film yet, and all your stuff is overexposed. And anyway, but that's how you learn how to make a movie is by just messing it up. But yeah, no, film school was incredible, and being in New York was incredible. And I was really able to hone my voice there. And I would say like the films that I was watching around that time, I think um, just spoke to me in different ways, and that just helped me hone my voice and during that time. But yeah, I would say like films like Network. Like my father showed me Network when I was around 10 too. But then rewatching that in film school, and I feel like there were three specific films that taught me different things. And but in terms of like Network, that was like all about like tone and writing. I had just never seen a film like that. They still don't make movies like that. I mean, just like that was I felt like an anomaly. But yeah, and then in terms of performance, it was like Woman Under the Influence. I remember seeing that um, for the first time at BAM in New York on the original film print, and that was just incredible. And then my professor freshman year at NYU, he showed me this film called I'm Cuba, which made me think about camera direction in a completely different way. Like that film, it's like the camera is almost like a character through the film, and it just made me think about what is possible in cinema in terms of how you tell a story through the lens. So I think like those were three. I remember three specific films that just hit me at a certain time that set me on my path. I think towards what I wanted to do, and developing my own stories, obviously in my own voice. But yeah.
You can see the influence of those. I don't know if they have a title, but those smart thrillers, those intelligent
Mhm.
character thrillers that you mentioned, in seeing that kind of translate into what fair play is, because the writing and the characters are just, yeah, it's written so intelligently that, um I think going back and forth on who you empathize with and sympathize with, and it really comes through in that. Did you continue making films and directing and staying behind the camera when you were deep into writing for um, the series that you were writing for Ballers and for Billions and those? Did you continue making films?
Yeah, basically out of film school, I started directing like little commercials here and there to try and make money. I was barely scraping by. And so I was trying to figure out, as every filmmaker and artist is trying to figure out, how do you support yourself while trying to pursue what you want to do, right? And commercials just weren't doing it for me. I think there
Yeah.
was also a period where it was like a dry spell. I hit like a dry spell where it was like no work for like 9 months, and I'm like I'm gonna starve. Like this is not so. I was interested in getting into TV primarily first because of money, um, and yeah, so but I didn't really know anyone. The only person I knew in TV was this director, Julian Farino, who directed a lot of Entourage, and just a lot of different HBO shows. And he he was going to shoot Ballers. Like he would just sign up to shoot the pilot for that. And basically I reached out to him just on a whim. I'm like, are you looking for an assistant? Can I, can I
Yeah.
do your dry cleaning? Can I carry your coffee? Like, can I do anything to try and, secure a job so that I don't starve for a moment? Anyway, and he was lovely. He brought me in under his wing, and I became his assistant for a year. And but yeah, he was a big champion of mine, and I shared a lot of my work with him. And he was the one who really who gave me an opportunity in television and introduced me to Steve Levinson, who also gave me my first opportunity in television. And from there it was. Uh, yeah, it was I kind of basically just set on the path of like directing TV, for
Yeah.
to ride that wave a bit, while I figured out what the story, what I wanted my first feature to be. I was writing different things at the time, but none of them felt like it was quite hitting exactly like what I wanted to hit, or it didn't. It just I'd write things and I was like, okay, this isn't good enough, so I would set it aside, but I would pursue that story all the way through to have to know if it was good enough or not. But in the meantime, I was directing different episodes of television, which I think was invaluable, because it taught me how to be a professional. I was able to hone different skills. I was able to work within different genres, trying different things. So that I feel like by the time, and all while doing that, I was searching for the story that I wanted to tell. And this was something that it came to me a while ago, but I actually wasn't ready to tell it. And I tried to tell this story in a different way, a while ago, and I wasn't, there's something about certain stories you need to experience more life, or more perspective before you can
Mhm.
go back and tell certain stories.
Mhm.
So um, this is one that I kind of let sit, and I continue to explore other stories while directing TV, and then eventually more life experience hit me, and it was like, no, this. There was, at that point it was like, no, this is like, I can't not tell this story. And at that point, when I became so confident, then I switched, all my focus from TV into this film and this story, because ultimately my goal has always been to tell my own stories, make my own films.
In terms of Ballers, in terms of Billion, it's like that's high intensity writing. It's like, how did you kind of, when you dive into that, what was
Yeah.
that like? It's like, what did you fear? What did you overcome in terms of making sure it was successful for you?
In terms of fair play.
No, no, in terms of the television, in terms of writing.
Oh, writing and for those shows.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like that's high intensity. So it was, you know,
yeah, no, totally.
of what you took away from it, especially as you're starting to as you were looking at your own projects.
I don't know. It was never anything that I questioned. It was never anything that I felt intimidated by. It was just always
Okay.
like what I always start from a place of what does the character want, what's getting in the way of what they want, and what's emotionally driving them to that place, and just always working from trying to visually then craft the story. Um, if I'm coming on as a director for that, in terms of like writing in the writers' room on some of those shows, like it was for me. I felt like I I just always wanted to take it a little bit farther, than maybe
Yeah.
some of the other writers wanted to go. I like to push the envelope. So I was excited. I've always been excited by high stakes environment, because I feel like it's right for drama. It's right for conflict, and you can just push things a little bit farther than other settings. So for me, it was just a playground.
With those shows and fair play and being in finance and being in sports negotiation and ownership and agents and is did you like that world? I thought it doesn't sound like, I mean, you came from a creative and came that, but those are very similar worlds of high stakes, high finance, high
Mhm.
negotiation. Was there a lot of research? Was there a lot of what was your interest in? And I mean, it sounds like Ballers was, I had to feed myself, so I got involved with Ballers. But there's really a similarity in those projects, and then and then the topic of fair play as well with being in finance. Was that an interest that you had to dig into?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, it was definitely, yeah, definitely research for sure. But for me, it was always about trying to tap into the emotional need of the character first, right? So
Mhm.
it's like if you can relate to that, then the logistics and and the day-to-day stuff of how that world operates, that stuff is easy to learn. It's and it's almost like that stuff is like studying for a math test. you but I think the harder part was always the character arc and making that as interesting and complicated, and compelling as that can be. But yeah, for me, it's even though I've never worked in finance, I've never worked in the sports world, like all that stuff. For me, it was I relate to wanting something more than anything. I
Mhm.
relate to wanting to achieve that at all costs. um, uh, I relate to the highs and lows of what that does,
Mhm.
to you, and the highs and lows of these kinds of high stakes environments. I think it's very similar to the film and TV industry. On one day you can feel on top of the world, the next day you can feel like a worthless piece of shit, and how it fluctuates can
Mhm.
fluctuate so quickly between the two. Um, and what that does, what that does to you, and the toll it takes on your soul, the toll it takes on your relationship. I think I relate to all those things. So that was very it was very organic. I felt like I could organically write from that, even though I had no experience in those specific worlds.
But no, that's interesting because they're so, yeah, and they're so specific and they're so deeply
Hmm.
part of the story. How long did you work on Fair Play before it came to fruition? How long were you involved in it? Or it was your baby, so how you had it the whole time?
Yeah. Um, yeah. Well, like I said, I had some ideas, for the relationship aspect of of it years ago, and then set it aside for a little bit and experience life and experience more relationships and more ups and downs with like career opportunities and then and then and then I really sat down to at some point it did hit me, and I sat down and I wrote it, and I think it was like a couple of years, probably. I don't know. I would say it's been the last like three years. That's been like primarily I would say the main chunk of the timeline for it. Yeah.
What challenges did you have any challenges making the film in terms of like once you got the script done?
I mean, there's nothing, filmmaking is nothing but challenges.
No, it is. But like, were there any big ones? It's like, just because like our audience are obviously all creatives that are trying to get their projects. It's like, were there lessons that you learned through the process that you thought, wow, I thought this was going to be easy, but it turned out to be really hard, and vice versa?
Yeah, I would say prep prep is incredibly challenging because there are so many things that are outside your control. And in terms of like not you don't know with talent and agents and they're until they get on set, you don't know if they're actually going to be on set. So there are lots of there was a lot of anxiety around just securing talent, but also we were experiencing Omicron was rising at a time, and we're shooting in a different country, and completely new crews. And so, I mean, it was a lot of moving parts that in many ways are outside your control. And that's very hard for me as a director who wants to control everything. Right. Prep was, I think, the hardest part. I knew that as soon as we started shooting, I would feel really confident. And because it was like, then it was my set. And like, then I knew this story. I had prepared like the whole film, like with, I knew every shot, I knew every cut. Like I knew this movie like through and through. And I had honed it for so long, I'd honed it for just the visual look. I'd honed it for like a year, leading up to shooting it. And I knew exactly what I wanted out of it. So I knew that as soon as we started shooting, like everything would be fine, but we just had to get to shooting. And then finally, when we did get to shooting, like directing, like being on set and directing and working with the cast and the crew was nothing but joy. It was really
it's fantastic.
Yeah. There, even the challenges on set, you're in it. And you're in it together at that point. So you're getting hit with certain things, but you're there and you're doing it, and so you keep going. So yeah, it was really the greatest joy of my life was those 30 days of shooting that movie. And then you get into post, and then because directing, it's like it's all play. You just get to explore and play and shoot and shoot what you wanted, and surprising things come up. But then you get into post, and then you see a first cut, and you're like, okay, certain things were not what I expected, or you have to kind of get on the same page with the editor first, and start to speak the same language, and that's a process. But for me, it was really, I think the hardest part besides prep was like the last month of locking the cut, because you at that point lose perspective, and you don't feel certain things anymore. So at certain things, I was trying to push certain things and push certain moments that didn't need to be pushed because I wasn't feeling it, because I was numb to certain emotional moments in the film. And that was a big lesson that I learned, is that I had to trust certain decisions that I had made, prior to that, and just stick to that. And instead of, in the last month, I was questioning a lot of choices, because I wasn't personally feeling it. So I undid some things. I questioned things. Ultimately, I did go back to, what my first instinct was on it, and that it was also, but we did a lot of test screenings for this film too, like, because no one person is going to come out of this film feeling the the same way. They're going to feel, they're going to have their own opinion and their own feeling based on who they are and their experience. This film will undoubtedly, fuel conversation and debate. But it was really interesting to see like certain moments where I empathize with Luke, other people didn't, and it was interesting to know why. And so a lot of it was a lot of the process in my director's cut was like just testing certain cuts for audiences and just seeing how they felt about each character in certain moments. But it's really fascinating with this film. You dial like some scene a little bit to the left towards him, and it completely changes how you feel about her. You dial it a little bit to the right towards her, it completely changes how you feel about him for the next 20 minutes. I mean, this was a fascinating, this was just a fascinating process. I had never experienced this on any other thing that I directed before, where you just dial a little bit left or right, and it just completely changed who you empathize with. And so that was also a big part of the process. That was challenging to navigate too, because it's like, how much do you listen then to other people, and how much do you trust yourself? And so it was always weighing that, and that's hard, especially when you're 6 months in, and when you're staring at this thing every day, and yeah, the perspective thing is hard to hold on to.
Especially when
Were
you
there
know it
ways?
in your head. It was a way that nobody else could ever know, because you've known it for 3 years before anyone else, really got to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were there ways that you grounded yourself in the process? Are you like do you meditate? Do you like, are there ways that you grounded yourself to say, you know what, I need to break from this and to walk away?
I ran every night as fast as I could in the dark.
There you go.
No, I think the other thing is, the good thing is that you're working on a scene, right? So you're working on a scene for like, say, 3 days straight, and you're just trying to hone that scene or play with it. So then when you then come back to another scene, you have fresher eyes. So that's kind of also how I would navigate it. If I felt like I was losing perspective on a certain part of the film, I would focus on the beginning or whatever it was, and then come back to it a little bit later.
I want to, before we talk about the whirlwind of Sundance and everything that's happened with the film that's so amazing, what does your team look like? I mean, the actors are so amazing in this film, and I mean the casting is just, I of course can't imagine it with anyone else. What did you work with any of the actors or actresses before? And then like, what with the behind the scenes team, do you have close people as you're kind of growing through the industry and your career, that your team you put together?
Yeah, so I never worked with those actors before. I saw Phoebe from Bridgerton,
Wow.
and I think what was important for me about like the character of Emily, she is a rising star in her world, and I thought it was important to cast a rising star. And I think that was definitely Phoebe coming off of Bridgerton. But that was a very small small part of it. For me, the bigger part was just watching her in the pilot. I could tell she was an incredibly strong, versatile actor. She was incredibly dialed in. She was really present. There was like a vulnerability there, but also a fierceness. And I just knew that, there was an untapped fury that she could just unleash in this film. And that really excited me. It excites me to cast people who had never done anything like this before. I always like to cast a little bit against type. Yeah, in terms of Alden, I mean, he's an incredibly versatile actor. And I think, I mean, he can really do anything. I mean, so can Phoebe. But just talking to Alden, it was like I knew that it was going to take an incredibly confident man to go to that level of insecurity. And a lot of, when I was meeting with different actors, it was just there was a lot of young men were afraid to play this role.
Mhm.
And with Alden, it was like there was no question. Like it was for him, it was rich material that he was excited to dive into, and he dove head first, and he it's like he's throughout so many scenes that where even I didn't have so much empathy for Luke, like he made me feel for him, and yeah, just the incredible like complexity and humanity that he brought to that role. I just think took that character to a whole other level. But yeah, they both actors. I mean, they surprised me so many times. They surprised each other, and it was just yeah, it was nothing but joy working with them. And in terms of Eddie Marsan, I mean, he's been one of my favorite character actors forever. I've always wanted to work with
Yeah.
him. And what excited me for with him with this role is that he never played like this type of like boss character before, especially in this world. And usually we see him as like the unhinged man, losing his shit. But and that's what excited him. That's what drew him to this role too. Is he's never played a role like this before. But there's just something about Eddie. He's just effortless, and there's something in his eyes. There's just this. He brings this. There's like this electricity that you can't quite put your finger on. And with that, there's a certain element of danger that comes with it because you never know what he's going to say or do, and that to me is like it is so magnetic to watch.
There were so many times where his facial expression and him listening to whoever he was talking to, and then what came out of his mouth was not what I thought it was going
No,
to be.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, of him being, so looking so like understanding and listening, and then it was, yeah,
He bites your head off.
right, right, but in such a calm, eerie way.
Totally. That's what I mean. He's like, it's effortless. It's just effortless. But yeah.
There were so many times, and in the writing and in, and you describing what you got out of the actors, that I so felt for Emily, like, to not, like, I didn't know if to the trust, because you set up in the movie you set it up that they trust each other, they love each other so much, and they're in this together, and then just those little things in the one scene where he tells her that she dresses like a cupcake, that I found myself like, wait, is he trying to screw her? Is he, or like make her miss? Is he trying to help her? And then I was like, it was so just his delivery. Yeah, it's there, and there's so many of those scenes
Mm-hmm.
through it where that you don't know whether to trust what he's doing and saying to her, and vice versa,
Mm-hmm.
of how are they trying to help each other? Are they trying to screw each other out? Yeah,
I
that
think
was,
that's and that's definitely what I was going for. I think it's that no, in those kinds of relationships, it's like that. There's when you get to that level of toxicity in a certain or that level of tension, there is such a fine line between love and hate, and wanting to. There's
Yeah.
such a fine line between wanting to care for someone and hurt them at the same time.
right,
And
right,
it does start out with, oh, I'm just trying to help you, because this is, certain appearance, affects how people, think about you. But ultimately, where that is coming from is his place of insecurity from himself and where he's at. And that's the first place that in the movie that he uses, that his insecurity becomes a weapon. He
right, right,
weaponizes his insecurity against her.
right.
Uh,
His power
and
over
then
her.
what starts out as little um, passive aggressive comments, it turns into more verbal assaults and emotional attacks, and then so on. But yeah.
Walk us through what. So you have the movie, you finish the film, and you are decide you're going to take it to Sundance last year. You did that on your own, right? You didn't have a studio, you didn't have distribution yet.
No, but we had MRC,
Okay,
who financed the movie, and T Street, who produced the
right.
film, and
Produced.
Star Thrower, who also produced the film. So, we had some good people behind us going into the festival. But no, it was an I was incredibly thrilled when we found out we were accepted and we were in competition. I mean, it's always been
Right.
the dream to premiere, the film in competition at Sundance has always
And
been the
then
dream.
the response and the bidding starts
Yeah,
and
yeah, it was wild. It was wild, but it was a really magical weekend, and I mean, first and foremost, I was just so thrilled to share it with finally put it out there
Mhm.
and share it with people and yeah, the first screening was just the first screening was just bonkers. It was just it was just I mean, the amount of laughs we got out of discomfort in the room, I thought was really was awesome.
Right.
Um, because we like I said, we test screened the film before, and you could feel like people watch this film like they react like it's a horror film. That's kind of the reactions that you get, and you get audible gasps, you get cringes and people squirming in their seats and stuff, and you do get uncomfortable laughs too. But like yeah, the there it was. I would say the amount of people actually laughing through it was was quite joyful. Yeah.
So were you other than I don't know how I've never been a filmmaker, but when you're in competition and you see the response, do what part do you play in deciding who ultimately ends up with the film? I mean, were you thrilled that I mean obviously that it was the highest bid sold film and obviously at the festival, so amazing. But were you with it being Netflix, was it with streaming, with theatrical, with how are you part of what's that negotiation like?
it was a team decision, between me and the producers and MRC, but obviously, yeah, there was the financial consideration for sure, but a lot of it was who are going to be the best partners, who's going
Mhm.
to get behind the film, who understands the film and is going to push for it and market the film and as best they can. And I think ultimately, that's why we went with Netflix and really like the global reach they have. Like I want as many people to see this film as possible, and the global reach that Netflix has, and the global campaign that they want to do with this
Mhm.
movie.
Mhm.
I think was ultimately where we landed with it, and also they're going to give us theatrical, so I didn't feel like that was a compromise.
That's great. So tell us the whole plan for the film because it's going to TIFF, right? It's going to
Mhm.
Toronto for competition.
Yeah.
And then I assume I used to be the head film buyer for ArcLight and
Oh
and
yeah.
AMC, yeah. So I know the whole world of award season and the kind of the
Yeah.
flow. So it's going to the festivals, and then I'm assuming they're putting it out there for award season theatrical. I know Spencer very well that handles all the theatrical for Netflix. Tell him hello for me.
Yeah. Love
But
Spencer.
is that the whole plan that with the for this fall?
Yeah, we'll see how, again, putting it out there, the reactions, and seeing the conversations that
Mhm.
start up again. But yeah, we're gonna, our international premiere will be at TIFF. Then we'll take it to, we'll do some screenings, New York, LA, London. We're going to go to Zurich Film Festival, and then we're going to go to some other regional film festivals throughout. But yeah, then the film comes out in theaters September 29th,
Oh,
and
good. Okay, so it just does have a date.
yeah, and then it'll come out on Netflix on the platform October 13th.
So Chloe, with all of this going on, have you started working on another project yet or no?
I
Or are you taking a break?
No, I don't take breaks. To my own detriment, I do not take breaks. But I'm learning to you know try to do that a little bit more. But no, I know the next 4 movies that I want to make. I feel like Fair Play is
That's amazing.
yeah, it was just the first piece of a bigger picture what I want to do and the kinds of films I want to make. But yeah, the next film I want to make, I've had an idea for that film for a while, and I've been honing the script kind of around the same time that I was writing Fair Play as well, and decided to make Fair Play first because this next film really feels like a good sophomore feature. But yeah, it's exciting, and it's equally batshit and crazy and spicy, and I don't know. I'm gonna push it, and I'm
That's
gonna go
awesome.
there with it. So you know,
Can you give us
um,
can you give us some insight into what themes you explore in the next one?
I can't, but I will say with all my films, I want to take audiences on a ride. I want to explore provocative shades of gray. I want to shock people, move people, mortify people, um, because like that's what entertainment means to me. And I really believe that the power of entertainment is to get an audience to lean into tough subject matters that they would normally be too scared to touch. And for me, like the tougher the subject matter, the more entertaining a film needs to be. And I just think there's a big kind of gap, and divide in our industry where you have a lot of, films that are just focused on entertaining and don't have much substance and meaning. And then really, you have films that are very heavy subject matters that are a very heavy watch. And I think that there are very, few films and few exceptions and few filmmakers, that kind of bridge that gap. And so that's always been my goal is to explore tough things, but yeah, make it as entertaining as possible too.
So when you're writing or when you're in it, what do you like to watch? What's entertaining you as you're besides going for a run when you're trying to take a break? Do you have anything that you're reading or watching or you've seen that you've loved lately or that has influenced you? Not influence because you
Um,
told us your influence, but some things that are just kind of now taking you away, giving you entertainment.
I think I mean I go between watching new films and then going back to films that I just love that I think are hard to beat. I think one of the most exciting filmmakers for me is Ruben Ostlund. I just think he's his films, what he tackles, his approach. I always go back to his movies. I love them. Um, uh, but yeah, but then also just go and watch The Godfather for the 100th time because it's like the best. It's the best comfort for me, and it's old Hollywood, and it's a bit yeah. There's just it's The Godfather, so I can watch that movie probably every night of the week. And then there's obviously there's like some reading. There's this book I read recently that I think is incredible, Bluets, by Maggie Nelson.
Bluets.
Yeah, Bluets by Maggie Nelson. I thought that was an incredible read. She's an incredible writer. Um, I like reading prose and essays. I found that I've gravitated more towards that lately. Um, but yeah, um, that's and then I'll watch some stuff that's just mindless too to turn off because that's important as well.
Do you still go to the theaters to go to see movies? Where do you
Oh
go in LA these days? Century
yeah,
City?
absolutely. I still am waiting for ArcLight to come back. LA has
Mm.
not been the same, and theater going has not been the same since ArcLight closed, and that's
Chris is still trying to reopen the Hollywood location. He kept that one, sold
hmm
off everything else in the bankruptcy, but yeah, he kept the Hollywood location, and they keep saying they're going to remodel a little bit and reopen. So we'll see.
I mean, just the way those guys operate, they've always treated film like art and the way they
Hmm.
introduce it and
Hmm.
the respect. And it's not, it's a totally different, experience when you go there and there's just nothing like it.
As the New Yorker of the bunch, we never had one.
Oh, really?
No, no, in New
No,
York,
we always
movie
had
going is
New
so
York,
bad.
New York theaters are horrible. So Gretchen and I knew each other through ArcLight. So whenever I go to LA, I see a lot of film. So just because ArcLight was just such an incredible experience versus like New York, where you're like, am I going to get bed bugs like while I sit here?
Also, no, no,
It was
totally. I mean,
awful,
yeah, like
awful.
when the and I love this theater, but you can hear the subway going by, like you're just like, and
Yeah,
yeah, no, it's yeah,
New York's
but
slightly different. As a
yeah.
fellow NYU kid, I didn't really have. There's not a lot of theater pickings in New York that are awesome.
Yeah,
But
but
we
Lincoln
all
Center,
you know,
we have yeah, New York has Lincoln Center, which is
Yeah,
incredible, I
yeah.
think, and yeah, some of the
Well,
Paris theater.
Look, Cinema's just
yeah.
reopened the Lincoln Center Theater on 57th, so it's just remodeled and reopened.
I didn't
So
know that. Okay.
yeah, it just opened about 3 weeks ago. So I went in one. It's nice. They do a really nice job, but now it's, it's still not. It's everybody, even theaters that tried to do, and Chloe, you hit it on the head. I mean, Chris Foreman, who owned the circuit and owned ArcLight, is in Pacific Theaters. That was absolutely why we started ArcLight, because Pacific theaters were, the Grove and Glendale were, in much more mainstream megaplex circuit, and with ArcLight, it was, his respect for writing and his respect for filmmaking that said it has to be better than this. It has to be better than neon on the walls and commercials. And we used to say the only place you didn't get commercials were church and ArcLight, and we and we held to that. I mean, we held to it. We never showed advertising. We only showed 3 trailers. And the other night I was seeing Oppenheimer at an AMC, and I swear to God, the people behind me chewed for 3 hours and 8 seconds without stopping, and crinkled their bags, and even the things that, Renee did our PR at ArcLight, and that's how we started working together. But we didn't have popcorn bags; we had buckets, so they were quiet. We used to sit in the office and be when I tell them the story, we would test the candy to see how loud the crinkling was.
Amazing. That's amazing.
To
Well,
for
there was a whole article in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was this week, about how moviegoers with the Barbie movie, like the issues that people are having because people are taking out their phones. They're doing like it's wild how people are behaving in movie theaters
yeah,
now.
yeah.
It's absolutely crazy.
So it is no, and there's there's theaters that there's a lot of trying, a lot of copycat, but really when you got down to it with ArcLight, the essence of it and the way people behaved and the atmosphere of the theater, it was the moviegoers. I mean, people would say all the time, "Oh, you have to police it because you don't let people come in late, or you have to police it because you don't let people talk." You don't have to police anything.
Yeah.
The community expected that from each other,
Well,
and
when you set the tone from the
yeah,
top down,
yeah,
and you like that's what ArcLight did, and that's what you guys did. You set the
Yeah.
tone, and
yeah,
then once you set that, people they will gravitate towards it, and they will follow that, and will respect it. But yeah, you set the tone. Other theaters where you can order a burger and you have someone eating a hamburger next to you and someone eating pad thai next to you, and then waiters
yeah,
crossing the screen. You're just like, what are we doing here?
yeah,
What are we doing?
exactly. I don't want to hear your fork and knife clinkety clinkety.
No, not at
But have
all.
you seen in Paris? Like that's a whole other game. Like
Yeah,
you go to a film in Paris, there is no talking.
right.
There is no talking, there is no eating, there is no drinking. It is literally art. They are watching
Yeah.
art and they respect it like art, and then the film ends and then they go outside and they smoke a cigarette and then they talk about the
And
film.
then they talk about it. Yeah, we
Yeah.
used to get asked all constantly, why did we didn't have dine in? Why we didn't have reclining seats? Just all of that. And ArcLight never ever did that. And honestly, I think if Chris reopens the Hollywood location, I don't think he would still do that. That uninterrupted experience was. I mean, he really, really, really would have, if he could have made money, wouldn't have had concessions at all.
Mhm.
Um, I don't, I, and it was, I mean, and you saw how few choices there were and how deliberate those choices were. But yeah, it is, no, it's very, and especially now that we don't have it and it's gone, it's so appreciated,
Mhm.
what it was,
Yeah.
and the types of film, and, just everything about it. So,
Yeah. Wow.
well, thank you, Chloe. It was so
Yeah.
nice
Thank you
meeting
so
you.
much. It was
And
lovely to meet you.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
so excited for the film and so excited for the festivals and keeping an eye on it. And yeah, we would love. We're doing some events in New York
Mhm.
in the fall for with women in entertainment. So we'd love to be in touch with
Great.
your
Yeah.
folks to see your availability and help in any
Mhm.
way we can of
Awesome.
getting the film out there. And we've actually been in touch with the theatrical team at Netflix for some projects and doing some things at their theaters that they bought in New York and in LA with our audience. So I think
Cool.
getting this film in front of the women in entertainment audience would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I would love that. That'd be great.
Mhm.
Okay,
Fantastic.
thank you so
All
much.
right.
Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Chloe.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womeninentertainment.com.